Hello, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Psychs with myself, Adam McCartney, and Mike Lane. Today we have with us a very special guest, well, special guest to me, Mr. Tom Hodgson. Tom and I have worked together for a number of years. He's one of my oldest clients, and I'm very glad to have him here with us today. Tom, introduce yourself, give a hello and a bit of a backstory about where you come from.
Yeah, hi Adam, hi Mike. Yeah, my name's Tom Hodgson. I'm a teaching SENCO primary school in the southwest. I've been doing it a few years, but it's a job I kind of accidentally fell into. If I'm being honest, I had a lot of experience from my previous school of working with children with additional needs, but not in any flat four capacity. And when I came to this school where I am now, I got asked to take on the role of SENCO. And at first I was a bit daunted, thinking, well, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. So I think they were thinking because of my experience from my previous setting, working in quite a challenging school with lots of additional need. I have that informal training, if you like, on the ground training. And I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. Yeah, so I've been SENCO for a few years now. Learning all the time, but absolutely love the job. And I love the fact that I'm a teaching SENCO. So I teach half the week and I'm out of class half the week. So I get what it's like. I understand the realities of implementing everything I'm asking teachers to implement because I'm having to do it myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I really value about your practice, Tom, is that you really do buy into the whole relationships aspect of teaching, don't you? And that's something we're going to get into in a little bit. But from an educational psychologist point of view, working with you has been a dream because when I make a recommendation, I know that it's going to be done because you completely buy into the whole philosophy behind it, don't you?
Yeah, and that's what I like working with you about, Adam, is that we have a professional conversation and we're on the same wavelength. And the things that you suggest are things that I totally agree with. So it's always a really positive and a really productive time that we have together because the things that we're going to implement off the back of your visits are always things that I absolutely agree with and are keen to get rolled out across the school. And so, I really enjoy the time that we have to talk about what's going on in school and problem solve. You don't, the SENCO role can be quite a lonely role sometimes, quite often having to problem solve on your own. And those opportunities to share your thinking with like-minded people is really valuable. Yeah.
And you really do need to share your thinking because you need someone who not only is on the same wavelength, but someone who can critique your thoughts and say, right, well, I see where you're coming from, but have you thought of this, that, and the other? And it's the exact same. And I think Michael will agree with me on this. The educational psychologist role is quite a lonely one as well. So some of our greatest allies, in fact, I think probably the greatest ally an ed psych has is the SENCO because, it's the teaching arm of the same profession, so to speak. And I want, because we're going to talk about a case, aren't we? But before we get into it, I want to understand a little bit more about your journey and how you arrived at relationships being core to your practice over other forms of teaching or SEN support.
Yeah, well, for me in my teaching career, it's where I've had the most success is where I built those strong relationships with the pupils. And I think until you have that strong, trusting relationship with the children, it's impossible to get their buy-in. And where it's been most successful is that with those children who perhaps have found school tricky, have refused to come into school, their progress has been slow. Those are those children for whom, when you do build that relationship with, you really have really impactful results. And it's for me that has been at the core of everything I've done. Is first and foremost is building those trusting relationships with the children so that they feel safe in their environment and in the company of the which adults they're with, so that they are able to step over that threshold into school and take risks, both socially and academically. Fundamentals are getting those relationships right. Without that, well, sometimes it's impossible to get them into school, but certainly it's impossible to make progress unless you've got that buy-in from the children and you've got their that mutual trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk about a case, and this particular child was, am I right in saying, Tom, that he was on the verge of exclusion? And we've managed to turn it around for him. Do you want to give us a bit of a backstory about what was going on for this young boy?
Yeah, a child with really complex additional needs for whom other people involved in his journey, up to the point where you were involved, Adam, we were kind of a bit of a loss really as to where to go next. And we'd got to a point where his behavior was so challenging, was at risk of permanent exclusion. We had lots of like demand avoidance behaviors, wanting to be in control of everything, had really poor awareness of feelings, and he didn't have the vocabulary to be able to identify those feelings. So when things went wrong, it always resulted in him either breaking something, hurting somebody. First of all, he couldn't identify those feelings. He didn't know what they were, and he certainly didn't have the tools to be able to manage them. And it was really tricky for a period of time. We were worried that it was going to result in a permanent exclusion, and we were trying to think, well, what can we do to avoid that? And that's when you came in, Adam, and worked together on a plan. We had what we call a co-regulation plan around managing those difficult times in school. So there was that consistency in the language that we were using with him, but also the approaches from all staff at all levels. So it was really clear for him about those expectations when he was in school. Working as a team around the child is always essential, I think. But not only were we working together and with the staff in the school, but also bringing parents in as well and getting their full support. So you can see that there was a team around him supporting him. We were really concerned, yeah. But
Yeah,
the reason we're talking today is because actually we've had great success. So we had this really complex case at risk of exclusion, heavily reduced timetable, a number of fixed term exclusions, and yet we find ourselves today when we're talking about and actually celebrating the success that he's had and the journey that he's been on. We're really proud of him and the progress he's made, but also we've learned an awful lot through the process, which is hopefully what today is about, is sharing some of those things that have worked well.
absolutely. It is about sharing those experiences. And for the listener, the benefit is that I was in there recently and I couldn't pick him out, could I? I couldn't find him. I needed you to actually point him because he was so well integrated, it's just such a massive turnaround. So you've actually pinpointed 5 aspects to how you've supported him. And I think it might be useful to go into why these 5 aspects worked. Do you want to start off? I think you said relationships was first.
Yeah, relationships has been absolutely key. I did a lot of reading around the importance of building those positive relationships. And when I was doing my SENCO qualification, my assignments were all focused on the importance of relationships and the impact that they can have on getting children into school, but also their emotional regulation and ultimately their success in school academically, but socially and academically. But I always maintain you've got to get that relationship right first before that they are emotionally regulated to be able to access the learning, and then hopefully they make progress in their learning. Until you've got that relationship right and they're emotionally stable and have the toolkit to be able to manage those difficult times, then the learning is just not going to happen.
And it might be worthwhile looking into how you build those relationships, because traditionally, an EdSec report would have written something like a key adult must be named for this child. And usually it's teaching assistant is the named person. But you haven't done that, have you? You've gone for a different approach with this one.
Yeah, so what I always say is that the most vulnerable children should be working with the most skilled practitioners. And that's not necessarily the teachers. in this instance, the boy that we're talking about, for the most part, has worked with one of the members of our support team. It just so happens that person is best equipped to meet his needs and has skill set to be able to do that really effectively. They're a trained ELSA, emotional literacy support assistant, and that's been a really important part of his journey, him understanding his emotions and being able to label them and manage them through a range of different strategies. But for him to be able to work with this practitioner day in, day out, that has made a huge difference. But initially, when you came in, Adam, I think he wasn't in my class when you came in the first time. He was in the year below me, but certainly last year when he was in my class, the one trusting relationship that he had was with me.
Yeah, it was.
And that meant so much to him. There are things that he's said which have made me realize just how much that relationship does mean to him. And he's not very good at articulating that. You have to read between the lines, but it's clear that strong trust and relationship that we developed, which took time, it was hard work. And this is something that I relay to all the staff, is that those relationships are the hardest relationships, but they are the most important relationships.
And to put the listener in the room, I remember watching you interact with him as you were building that relationship. And it's almost like, a coiled spring. You can either let it go suddenly and it goes everywhere, or you slowly open your hand and the spring stays seated in your hand. And what you did was you give him little bits of trust. I remember we were doing a piece of joint work, not around him, but on something else in the library. And he was coming in at night and he was checking in with you, much like a young child might check in with a parent. And you were giving him very short, quick instructions on what he could do next. And then you got back to what you were doing. And he was just continually doing that check-in thing, almost like he was building a secure attachment with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when he left my classroom at the end of the summer term, there was a real anxiety about that, in his eyes, that relationship ending and that safety net that he had going. And it was important that I reminded him that I was still here for him, but also helped him transition into his new classroom and develop those new trusting relationships with the new team around him. For the whole of the autumn term, every morning he came in and the first thing he did was went and made me a cup of tea with a tray of biscuits. So it was his way of saying, "You haven't forgotten about me, have you?" And I was like, "Well, it's not." No, but what I've noticed.
You remembered how I take my tea.
Yeah, right. Over the recent weeks, he's doing that less because he's building new relationships. And it's important for him as he moves up through the school to develop more and more trusting relationships with adults and with the children. So he feels really safe in this environment, because for a period of time, I was the only person that he had that relationship with. So when I wasn't in, and quite often I'm out of class or out of school, it was really hard for him to manage and stay regulated.
Before we move on to empathy, sorry, Tom, I'm just imagining every other SENCO I work with said, if you let Tom move off this before asking him this question, I'll kill you, Adam. And the question is, how do you transition him to a new relationship? Because that is very tricky for a lot of schools when they build that secure one with one adult, transitioning across to another.
Yeah. Lots of hand-holding, spent time in the new classroom alongside me. So in the summer term, we went and visit on a daily basis. So you become familiar with the new environment, but with the new adults. Doing work with the new adults that he would be working with, very gently, bit by bit. Mm-hmm. So he's slowly beginning to trust. There's that familiarity as well. Goes into the summer holiday thinking, all right, okay, I know what my new classroom environment looks like. I know who the new adults are in the team around me, but I also know that these trust person who's still there and will be checking in on me, and I know I can go to. So it was really important to build start building that relationship before we went into the long summer break. We also involved him and Mum in that conversation. about who is going to work with you, and it was important that we got that person right. So it was a collective decision that this person who was going to be that new trusted person that we were going to let in was somebody that was already identified as a possibility. So it felt okay. So with him wanting control over every aspect of his life, including him in that decision making was really important, because it was like, oh, actually, this is the person that I want to work with. They're listening to me. And so was more prepared to give it a chance.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I've done my duty there, and everybody can take nuggets of strategy from what you just shared. And you want to move on to the next one, which is empathy. Is that right?
Yeah. The final point I just wanted to make about the relationships is where I've seen it go wrong is where people have got to a point where they've said, I can't do it, it's too hard. Or they're saying this to me, they're doing this to me, and I'm not prepared to put up with it. They're telling me to F off, or they're running away, they're kicking me in the shins, and, they're ripping up the work which I prepared. And the point I always make is those I think I've made this point already, but it's so important that those relationships, those really difficult relationships to build, will become the most important relationships. And it's at those times that they need you most. When they're pushing, they're shouting, they're swearing at you. That's when they need you most. And at that point of crisis, they're almost testing that relationship. Are you going to leave me when I need you most, like everybody else does, or are you going to stick with me? And that's a really difficult message for some members of staff to apply, because it's hard. It was a lady called Louise Bomber. Her book, I don't know if you've seen it, Adam.
Oh, she got many books. Shout out to Louise Bomber. She's a lovely woman. I've spoken to her a few times.
Yeah, really. I mean, that book really resonated with me. And she said, relationships matter and make a difference. And genuine relationships aren't easy. They take hard work. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment.
And there's always something I hear you saying around your school. I don't even know if you're fully aware you say it, but you say every interaction is an intervention. And it sounds like those most challenging times, that mantra needs to be front and foremost in the mind of the teacher. Like, this child is challenging, but this is an intervention.
Absolutely. I got asked to do some CPD work with staff from across the trust, and it was all about those interventions. And outside of the classroom, typically, I argued that actually the most impactful interventions aren't the ones you do outside of the classroom. They're the ones that you do in the classroom. It's the morning meet and greet. That's an intervention. The stopping them in the hallway and saying, good to see you. That's an intervention. I feel like those ones are the ones that have the most impact. And it's that all stems from those positive relationships that you build with those pupils. Shall I move on, Adam? I'm gassing it, aren't I?
No, it's good. We're on to empathy now. This is lovely. Keep going.
So, the educational Rita Pearson, you heard of her? American lady. Yeah. She says that our job is seeking first to understand rather than be understood. And again, I think traditionally there is this expectation that I'm the teacher, you're the pupils, you listen to me, you follow my instruction. And when it goes wrong, it's the child's done something wrong. The child needs to do something differently moving forward. And I'd argue it's the other way around, that our job is to understand the children the best we can and to adapt the provision accordingly. And when things go wrong, to have that self-reflection where you stop and you think, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What could I do differently next time? Rather than what does the child need to do differently next time? And I think that comes from a place of empathy, is really understanding what life is like for each of those children that we care for in school. I think if you can do that and place yourself in the in the child's shoes and even begin to imagine what life is like for them, then you can adapt the provision to be able to meet their needs much more successfully.
Okay, let's grind that down a little bit with this particular case. What did you and your team do to try and understand this child's life in a bit more detail and apply that to your practice?
Well, like I've said before, working as a team around that child. So talking to the parents on a daily basis, the importance of them passing on any messages from home. So there would be mornings when he would come into school, he'd throw himself onto the floor in the corner of the library, and we've got to work as detectives trying to work out what's happened from waking up to getting to school that I need to understand so that I can adapt what I planned for the day so he can be successful. Mm-hmm. And, getting messages from parents as to, how the morning has gone is really important. So you've got that information, being able to talk to the children about that and them feeling comfortable to be able to share what's happened on their journey into school is really important. Understanding the family dynamic and the backstory.
There's two words jumping out at me as you're speaking, and it's that they both begin with C: context and curiosity. You go out of your way to learn the context of the child from the family perspective, even down to their routine in the morning. And then whenever it still goes wrong, you engage with the child with curiosity. Am I fair to say that?
Absolutely. I can remember vividly, we had a behaviour specialist in from the local authority. And I remember the child that we're talking about, he came into school and he did exactly what I described. We've some sofas in the library, and he came and he threw himself on the sofa face down. And I went over to him and I just put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "It's really good to see you. I can see that you're not feeling good. I just wanted to let you know I'm really pleased to see you, and I'm here if you want to talk." And I remember the behaviour specialist said that interaction it was so important to him because it let him know that you noticed him, you noticed something's wrong, and that you're available. Mm-hmm. I want to know what it is that's troubling you, but I'm curious is the word you use. But initially, I'm just going to let you be. I'm just letting you know I'm here. So I want to know, and in your time, you tell me.
I'm going to let you be. I'm curious. So you're open to them, which lets the child know that they're in an accepting environment, which automatically provides a sense of security. With security comes the confidence to interact. And maybe in that particular instance, he didn't, but the next one, he might.
Yeah, we did. We did get to the bottom of it. And there'd been a bust up at home, I think, with a sibling. But it's that one of the other points that we was going to talk about, which probably fits in this example, is that emotional attunement. So again, I think traditionally, as practitioners, when there's a problem, we want to fix it. So when a child is dysregulated, crying, sad, angry, typically we want to go in and we want to find out what the problem is and we want to fix it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes children don't need that. I mean, sometimes adults don't need that, do they? They just need somebody to know, we get it. I get it. Mm-hmm. Feeling rubbish. I understand. And I'm here for you. That has been really impactful for me. And other practitioners have said to me, how come you always get it out of them? How come they always respond to you? What are you doing that's so wildly different to what I'm doing? And I said, I'm not. All I'm doing is I'm just letting them know I care. I'm there. I'm emotionally available for them if they want to. Yeah. And sometimes if we go in and we try and fix a problem, we make it worse, I think.
I don't know what TV show it was, but there was a powerful scene where it's one of those family feel-good shows where the father comes in at the end of the day after a big family bust up, and he doesn't say anything to the kid, and he sits at the end of the bed, and he basically stays there until the kid's ready to talk. And you're doing that in a very, school-based way, and you're using much more language in that particular scene. But you're you're showing the child, I accept you for the state you're in. I accept you for who you are as a person, and I am a safe place to be. Whether you choose to use it or not is up to you, but it's there if you want to. And just by having that availability, that child's attunement, the ability to regulate already starts to kick in the gear. Their nervous system starts to calm down if you want to get into the technicalities of it. And as a practitioner, you I'm going out on a limb here, Tom, but it's probably taken you a long time to get to that point. You've probably had to do a lot of reflecting on your own practice and why you behave the way you behave.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I first started teaching, I was definitely of that mindset. If there was a problem, my job was to fix it. And over the years, I've realized, and like you say, through self-reflection, that I've realized that actually children don't always need that. Do you know, I always say to staff, the most impactful time I have in terms of reflection is that car drive home from work.
Mm-hmm.
After a tough day, get in the car, I've got the music on, and that 20, 25 minutes that it takes me to get home, I'm making sense of what's gone well, what's not gone so well. And just having that time each day at the end of the day, just to kind of process everything that's happened is really valuable. And I think it's really important that everybody does find that time to reflect and not just be busy, which is easy to fall into that trap as educationalists. Is just, you know, we're rushing from one thing to the next, but finding that time for you to have that self-reflection on what's worked well, what's not worked well is really important. I've realized things like that emotional attunement, things like that's come to me in those moments where I'm driving in my car, but actually that's not what they need. They just need to know that I'm there for them. I remember one time coming in school, he was another child actually, and he was in my classroom, and he was stood fixed to the ground, visibly shaking, crying, and nobody could figure out what the problem was. And I remember thinking, I don't need to find out what the problem is. And I just went up to him, put my hands on his shoulders, and I said, I can see you're feeling really cross today. I'm here for you. And immediately I could just sense this shift in his body language changed. There was he was relaxed, his shoulders dropped, he stopped shaking, just because he knew that actually somebody's listening.
Yeah,
So that's come from
absolutely.
that reflection. Yes, I've done lots of reading and I've been doing the job a long time, but that's come out in that time that can reflect.
And I'd say you can only get to that reflective point if you truly buy into your identity as a teacher.
Yeah.
You really have to value the profession and what you're doing. I want to move on to your next one. So that was emotional attunement. The next one you've got on your list is emotional literacy.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of
Big
work
one.
on this. So we had a member of staff trainers and also an emotional literacy support system. And we talk all the time, and we share the same values, and it's trying to get that woven through every aspect of school life, that culture within the school, the importance of children recognizing those feelings and having the vocabulary to be able to describe those feelings, and then ultimately having the strategies to be able to manage. So we offer two programs. One is what we call a well-being group. So it's a small group that meet once a week, light touch, talking about emotional well-being, emotional literacy. And then we have a more bespoke, like one-to-one program, which is based on an initial assessment that's done to find out specifically what the child needs. And then they meet usually once a week for a half term, are set clear targets at the beginning of the session, which are shared with parents. And they're working on that over the course of the 6-week program. Sometimes they stay on it for longer, but the impact of that has been amazing. And more children are accessing that. We're finding more and more children are needing that emotional support in school. And I don't know whether that's like post-COVID, but you certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a massive shift in children's emotional.
We won't open that can of worms in this episode, Tom. I'll be here all day. I want to ground that down for the child we were talking about.
Yep.
When you started to put those interventions in place for this child, what did you notice about how they use language?
Well, initially they didn't have any words to describe how they were feeling. Well, before that, they didn't have any awareness of those few words. It was just all came out in behavior. And I remember the first time we tried the incredible 5-point scale. I'd actually bought one, and it arrived laminated with a Velcro picture that you took off and you stuck on the emotion that related to how you were feeling. And I remember stapling it to his wall where he sits. And he came into school the next morning and he ripped it off the wall and said, "You can't tell me how I'm feeling." And I'm all brilliant. So we again, like a bit like with the emotional attunement, we had to baby steps. It was baby steps. It was all done through like social stories. It couldn't be done with him directly because he knew what you were getting at. He's really clever.
Yeah, he is.
He knows where you're going with something. So everything had to be done in a roundabout way. So he didn't know you were talking about him directly. But social stories are really good. Being able to talk about somebody else.
Another school I worked with, they didn't do the social stories, but they brought in a puppet, acted out social stories through the puppet, and that worked wonders too. It's funny how we can relate this story, but if you go, do you see that in your own life? Like, no, absolutely not. I do not.
Yeah, well, some children love it and some children hate it. And again, it's a fear in children. And in this instance, puppets are a no-no. I'd be the same. I've got a thing about puppets.
Does someone traumatize you as a child with a puppet?
Possibly.
And the last one that you brought up before we chat was the consistency. Arguably the easiest to talk about, but the most important one, I'd imagine.
So, yeah. When I spoke to the lady that works with this boy day in, day out, and I said, "Look, what do you think is the key to success?" And one of the key things she said was consistency. Mm-hmm. Consistency around who's going to be working with you, but also consistency in terms of that meet and greet in the morning, the routine of the day, sticking to your word. It was really difficult for him if you've promised something that you don't follow through on.
Yeah. And I would go one further I think it's really apt at the moment because you hear a lot in the media around burnout amongst teachers and head teachers is the consistency of your own emotional profile. And what I mean by that is recognizing when you're having a tough day as a teacher and how that might affect your interaction with the children. And that may be a case that you need to take a step back from what you're doing, for not take a complete step back, but think about how you can be supported by your colleagues in order to deliver that consistency for the child. Did you come across any of that when you were overseeing this boy's provision?
In terms of the emotional, in fact, it was a practitioner.
Yeah, not just you, but those you support as well, your colleagues.
Yeah.
How did you?
Tough job.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And especially, I've seen your setting. Your setting goes out of its way to be that thread through sort of setup where, like you said, every interaction is an intervention. You don't have dedicated, we're only going to do emotional literacy at this time to this time, and then we're back into the standard curriculum. It's all there. So I imagine there's lots of containment of the adults that you have to do. Is that fair to say?
It is, yeah. And we quite often, with those children like the one we're talking about, it is so intense. You do need to have the option of someone else coming in, change your face, particularly at those points where it's becoming quite bubbly. There's a little bit of conflict in that relationship, which, inevitably will happen. Mm-hmm. Happens in all relationships, doesn't it? So we are a policy where in that situation, another member of staff steps in and check for
Mhm.
100 face. So we do need a bit of a team around the child. You've got that in this instance. So you've got class teacher, you've got myself as SENCO, you've also got head teacher, you've got the one-to-one, but you've also got like neighboring one-to-ones who work in the next door classroom or other ends of the school who have got a bit of a relationship, so they can step in and give you that emotional space that you need just for a moment, because it can be a lot.
Yeah. And as you're talking there, you finish. You go first.
They need somebody who's checking in on them and somebody that they can talk to. So as SENCO, it's really important that I make the time to go in and check in on all of those adults that are working with those children, and they know that they can come and talk to me and share any concerns that they've got. Because it's, again, a bit like me saying the SENCO role is a lonely job. Being a one-to-one can be an incredibly lonely job.
You can be
isolated at times.
And it's good that you recognize that, and you've gone out of your way to make your role and your organization capable of delivering that, because if you weren't able to do those check-ins, I'd imagine the rate of burnout would be much higher, and the success you've had with this child wouldn't be there without something as simple as checking in with the adults. We're coming to the end of the go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, that you know how we say, like we talked about that emotional attunement and not always wanting to fix the problem, but I think that works the same with the adults as well, because you've got to accept that sometimes it's really tough, and sometimes you're going to get really down or cross, frustrated, but at the same time, there's not a lot we can do about it. But in those situations, a bit like we did with the children, is just saying, I get it, it's hard, and I'm here for you if you need to talk. Sometimes that is enough. And I make one other point, which I forgot to make earlier, which is kind of, I'm a bit out of sync, but I think it's really important. So for some time, we're trying to create this culture in the school where everybody gets it and everybody's got the same value set, and there's that same approach regardless of which adult the child encounters. There's living and breathing it in the school, and that'll take time. That does take time. We're getting there, but quite often you just need things to happen. So as part of my job is I'm asking people to do things, and sometimes I'm asking people to do things they might not necessarily agree with, but probably they don't understand. And I remember when you came in and you did some work with the support staff, I think the training was called Creating a Regulated Life.
Yeah, it was.
And you're helping them to understand a little bit about the brain science behind some decision make. I always remember that we had a member of the support team who said to me, Tom, I was always doing these things because you told me to do them, and now I'm doing them because I understand. And I think that was really powerful, because I think if you're going to get true buy-in from the team, there does need to be that continuing professional development and upskilling of staff so that they have got the understanding behind their practice.
And one, that's called good teamwork between you and I. I don't want to take all the credit on that, because you were able to take that training and apply it across the setting. And I want to finish on that point, Tom, because shortly after that visit, you actually had an Ofsted visit, didn't you? And it was under the old framework before we had the 6 categories, or how many categories it is. And I just wanted to check with you, how did that go?
Yeah, it was good. It was just over a year ago that they came to inspect. We were sitting on an outstanding from the previous inspection, which was a long time ago. And so obviously you can imagine there was a lot of nervousness about like retaining that, because it's very difficult. And particularly from an SEM point of view, I was more excited than anything else when they came, because it was an opportunity for me to celebrate what we were doing. And I was really proud of what we were doing from an SEM point of view. And I remember, because they come in and they look at SEN through everything. So then they're looking at books, they're looking at what's it like for SEN children. When they're looking in classrooms. It's, what your SEN children do. So they saw it firsthand. But I remember when I had my one-to-one meeting with the inspector, which was my opportunity to sit down with them and answer their questions. And I came in with so much I wanted to talk about. I remember it really clearly that the inspector said, there are various things that we need to talk about. Where should we start? And I said, would you mind if I started? And she said, yeah, of course. So I started talking. She didn't say a word for the whole meeting. It was probably about as long as we've been talking. And at the end, she went, thank you. That's everything. Clucks the folder. And then in the feedback, I'll never forget it. One of the comments the lead inspector said was, they've never seen SEN like it in all the schools they've ever inspected. And I thought, yeah, they really did hear what I was saying and listened, and actually it validated everything that we've been doing. And I felt immensely proud.
I share that pride with you, because it's a journey that I've really enjoyed being on with you. Tom, I'm really sorry. On that high note, I want to end it there because we've gone way over time. It's been a joy. No, it's been good. It's been a joy having you on. I've really enjoyed celebrating that case with you. I think there's so much within it. And ultimately, it was a success story because we managed to keep this kid in a mainstream setting whereby his outcomes could have been very different.
Yeah. Adam, can I probably didn't explain right at the beginning that this child, we said he was at risk of permanent exclusion. He had recently got his education healthcare plan, his EHCP, but we were looking to amend it to name a specialist setting because the feeling was we couldn't meet his needs. We've actually met with parents and we changed that now. He wants to stay.
Fantastic. And
the reducing table that he was on, we're increasing week by week because he's being so successful. And I think it summed it up when you came in. Was it last week or the week before?
I think it was 2 weeks ago at this point.
2 weeks ago. We sat in assembly and I said, look, Adam. And you were like, what am I looking at? I said, look, there he is. He sat in the...
I couldn't recognize him.
And you picked him out.
No, I couldn't.
And you first came in to see him. If he had said in a few years' time that'd be the case, we just wouldn't have believed it. So yeah, thank you for all your support.
No, and thank you for your dedication and such a great outcome. We'll end it there. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tom. I'll see you soon.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.